As a nation, America has been fortunate during critical times in her history, when extraordinary challenges and events required extraordinary presidential leadership.
An hour in our history that troubled our minds and tore at our hearts.
Gerald Ford was propelled into the presidency by a sequence of unpredictable events. He had an impact so profound as rightly to be considered providential.
It was a time of national turmoil. President Nixon's Watergate scandal, the open wounds of the Vietnam War, rocky foreign relations, a national energy crisis, and an American economy ailing with runaway inflation. To lead the nation back, President Ford would need to rely on all that his life of service had prepared him for. Growing up in Grand Rapids, Jerry's close-knit family included 3 younger brothers. He became an avid Eagle Scout and captain of his high school football team. He went to the University of Michigan, earning a degree in economics and most valuable player honors in football. Despite pro football offers from the Green Bay Packers and Detroit Lions, Ford chose to attend law school at Yale University. He graduated from Yale Law School in the top quarter of his class and returned to Grand Rapids to work in a law firm with an eye on trying his hand at local politics. But when World War II erupted, Ford joined the U.S. Navy in 1942. He served as a lieutenant on the USS Monterey, earning numerous medals and awards for his service. He returned to civilian life in 1946, resuming his law practice and civic activities. Ford met his future wife, Betty Bloomer Warren, who was a former model and dancer with Martha Graham's company in New York City. The two were married in October 1948, just as Ford earned victory in his run for Congress from his Michigan district. Throughout his 25-year-long career as congressman, his work encompassed foreign policy, the military, federal spending, the space program, serving on the Warren Commission, and later as House Minority Leader. But in the 1970s, the political landscape changed. In October 1973, Vice President Spiro Agnew resigned under allegations of income tax evasion and bribery.
Congressman Gerald Ford of Michigan.
President Richard Nixon nominated Gerald Ford to take his place.
President Nixon stunned the country today by admitting he held back heaven.
President Nixon reportedly will announce his resignation tonight.
As investigations into Nixon's involvement in the Watergate scandal grew larger, Nixon resigned his presidency on August 9, 1974, and Gerald Ford was sworn in as the 38th President of the United States.
So help me God. Congratulations, Mr. President.
My fellow Americans, our long national nightmare is over. Our Constitution works. Our great republic is a government of laws and not of men.
One of the first challenges the new president would have to face was how to lead the country past the Watergate scandal, which had divided Americans and consumed national attention.
President, are you saying, sir, that the option of a pardon for former President Nixon is still an option that you will consider depending on what the courts will do?
Pressure mounted as Ford listened to lawyers argue the pros and cons of what should be done about the Nixon tapes, the Nixon papers, and pardoning Nixon. Ford was certain that if he let the charges against Nixon run their legal course, the country would remain mired in the Watergate scandal for years. What also became clear was that pardoning Nixon would be unpopular. Many people would view a pardon as a means of escaping justice instead of admitting wrongdoing. In spite of the fact that this decision could cost him politically, Ford summoned the courage to do what he knew to be right. On September 9, 1974, just 1 month after taking office, President Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon.
I decided that it was more important as president to be concerned about the national security, the economic success of 221 million Americans rather than the problems of one individual.
That very same month, Betty Ford was diagnosed with breast cancer and subsequently underwent a radical mastectomy. But in the face of all this adversity, the president pressed on with the work of the nation. As the Vietnam War ended with the fall of Saigon, President Ford wanted to make sure that the innocent victims and people who had been allies of the U.S. were not abandoned. The president, together with Mrs. Ford, personally welcomed many Vietnamese refugees as they arrived in America. President Ford also took a significant step in easing Cold War tensions with the Soviet Union by signing the Helsinki Accords, setting the stage for the resolution of disputes on issues such as arms control and human rights.
He advanced the American position in the world, and he contributed importantly to our victory in the Cold War.
And what he did to get our nation out of an economic hole is quite remarkable. The first piece of legislation he signed as president was the Housing and Community Development Act that changed the direction of how we dealt with housing. What the program did was enable mayors and states to address their top priorities.
There was also the need to restore a sense of national pride through celebrations commemorating America's 200th anniversary as an independent republic. And for the people in our democracy, new elections.
Delegates and alternates to this Republican convention, I am honored by your nomination and I accept it.
President Ford lost narrowly to Jimmy Carter in the 1976 presidential election.
I want to thank my predecessor for all he has done to heal our land.
History will remember Gerald Ford as a man who restored the honor and integrity of the Oval Office of the White House.
In the 895 days of his presidency, Gerald Ford provided America with integrity at the helm. He governed from a foundation of core values exhibiting honesty, courage, and determination. And in service to America, he led by example, putting the national interest ahead of his own.